So with the Chase Brown, Zach Moss one, right? Like I have currently 6% Moss, 12% Brown. I didn't have as much Brown as I liked. I was kind
What a
of,
coward. Yeah.
I know,
What
I
are
was
you
kind of
doing?
cowardly on Brown. It was a bit of I've just been rug pulled on this profile a lot. And it's kind of like, I'm going to.
Even the one play we watched that was really good last year is not enough to go
Exactly.
all in.
I'm like, this is the ultimate like fantasy Twitter hive mind wish casting and not gonna work. Like just the poster child of this. But I think it might work this time.
All right, Pat. It's therapy time. I need it. I feel like maybe if I need it, a lot of other people need it. As of this recording, the Hall of Fame game happened last night. It was also cut short. We're so starved for real football, but we're so inundated with drinking from a fire hose of training camp and soon to be preseason news and information and highlights and beat writer speculation that I think it's the perfect time. You brought it up. I was so glad you brought it up when we were chatting on the side to talk about like, let's take a step back for a second. And as important as all of this training camp news is, and it's wildly important. The last time you and I recorded, that's what we discussed. Camp hype, how to handle it, what things to care about, what things to maybe pump your brakes on. And we've had more like I expected a lot of access and I expected a lot of news and stuff to be flowing in from the beats and training camps and everything. This is beyond my wildest dreams of what's going on. Every single team has multiple beat reporters just wildly tweeting constantly every single day of every single
Not
practice.
every single team.
Yeah,
There's a couple
okay.
teams we could use a few more beats.
We'll call it 80% of the teams. There's a couple that I'm like, are they practicing? Like
we need a program where Patriots beat writers get relocated to the Falcons, maybe the Cardinals.
I know what Javon Baker eats for breakfast every morning, and I don't have the slightest goddamn idea if Trey McBride is still on the Cardinals.
I don't know.
I have no idea. Like, it's Rondale. We got a blurb from Falcons camp that Rondale was running with like the fours, and I haven't heard a peep. I haven't heard a peep ever since. But like I said, I know everything. I know every throw Patrick Mahomes makes in training camp. I know, so obviously joking around, but I think it is appropriate to as fixated as we get on all this training camp stuff. And we need to follow it. You and I talked before a lot about like, we can't just stick our head in the sand and like pray that what we thought in May was the right thing, because so much is going to change. Some things changed even last night in the Hall of Fame game. Like, why is Khalil Herbert playing in the second quarter of the Hall of Fame game? I don't know. But we also need to remember the game that we're playing. And that balancing act of remember, like a few months ago, before we had training camps and everything, we were all saying, remember, week 17 is all that matters. We want the rookies. We want the late season production, right? We want all of these different things. We want contingent value. And then training camp hits. And if your guy's not running with the ones, it's full blown. It's like full blown panic mode. We can't draft that guy anymore. And I think figuring out that balance now at this point in time, especially, it's only going to get worse, right? We got a month to go. It's only going to get worse. Making sure that like we kind of get almost in the right headspace, if you will, for the influx of information, and trying to be able to, you use the perfect word, parse, on our last show, like figuring out how to parse this information while comparing it to the fact that like we want to win in week 17. We're trying to win these tournaments. We don't win them in week 1. The week 1 depth chart is not static. Players get hurt, things change, chaos happens. That's the name of the game. So like kind of level setting right now on this influx of information and making sure that we're kind of right in the right headspace for everything is probably, it's going to be good for me. Like I said, it's a therapy session. I think everyone's struggling with it. I'm definitely personally struggling with it, but kind of talking it through, I think would be good for everybody.
Yeah. The kind of, one sentence topic that I pitched was week 1 brain. Because I think we're all fighting week 1 brain right now, including me. Like most of the news relates to week 1. Like what is the teams are prepping ultimately for week 1. and then they're going to play the games in order and see how it goes. So we're getting a lot of information about what the initial depth charts are going to look like, what the plans for the early season stuff are. They are taking a look at some. I think the Chiefs are probably doing. I still think the Chiefs with Deneric Prince are probably thinking bigger picture. We know who CH is. Let's see if this guy can be our RB2.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's getting a legit audition for the RB2, but he might fail that audition ultimately.
Right. Yeah.
And then they'll just go to CH who they there was a quote yesterday where they're like, Prince needs to know all the protections, and he's still kind of getting up to speed on that, but he's making progress. It's second year in the program. He knows what he needs to get done. We'll see how it goes. And then Clyde, Clyde knows all the protections. He knows the timing of the screen passes. He knows all of it. So we don't need to give this dude a single rep. We'll give all the reps to this other guy. And I'm drafting, the way I'm playing that now is I've stopped drafting CH and I am drafting Deneric Prince. I do think that might be a disaster, but I have CH. I drafted CH before. So I'm just going to get some Deneric Prince. My portfolio as a whole will have both these guys. In this particular scenario, I think having some teams with Chiefs running back 2 on them will be good. And right now, I'm just going to take the guy I think that is favored to win the job because I think CH is that, and they'll probably he probably does win the audition. But anyway, I think are a lot of these teams seem like they're just more they're truly just putting the guy who they think they can trust right away and giving them those reps. The Chiefs seem more, that situation seems like more of an outlier to me than what is more common. So an example of that would be we got AJ Dillon hype today. And on the Roto World Football Show, they had a beat writer on who was talking about AJ Dillon being the RB2 potentially in the kind of a Jamal Williams way, when they had Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon was drafted and he kind of played behind them. Maybe AJ Dillon could basically be the blocker to Marshawn Lloyd. That feels very week 1 brain to me. We know who AJ Dillon is. He stinks. We know that they're excited about Marshawn Lloyd. They think he can do some interesting stuff in the pass game. They talked up that they like committee approach. So we probably should not be. We should probably be very skeptical that Josh Jacobs is a total workhorse. Even the beat writer on the Roto Football Show, I didn't catch his name, sorry, but he was I think down the stretch, basically, that's when you'll probably see Marshawn Lloyd come on. Oh, really? A rookie is going to come on down the stretch? That's mind blowing. So nothing's. I guess what maybe what I did is I was I'll probably break ties more to Ty Chandler. Who's getting more of he's locked in.
He has both, right? Yeah, he has the down the stretch stuff, but also he doesn't have AJ Dillon around.
So I lowered Lloyd 4 spots or something in the ranks because I was it's probably somewhat newsworthy that a beat writer really doesn't think he's gonna come out of camp as the RB2. That's a little bit newsworthy, but it's not anything to panic over. And a lot of this stuff I think is minor adjustments with the idea of we're not hitting the nuts maybe with this play. And so some of that upside should come out of it a little bit of when we, in some of these cases, you're could this guy be the RB2 from week 1 on? It's well, Lloyd looks less likely for that maybe, but the fact that AJ Dillon, has abs, is that I'm out on Lloyd now? No, I'm not out on Lloyd. He's still AJ Dillon, so it's I do think some of this, it's not the AJ Dillon stuff was nothing, but it was probably closer to nothing than something to panic about.
I love the way that you put that and again, I think week 1 brain is the perfect way to encapsulate kind of everything that we're going to talk about, where it is, what I would classify it as is the bet can change. And maybe the bet did change with Marshawn Lloyd. I've used this in reference to Kendre Miller. And I know people don't like to talk about him because it's really not a very fun. Talking about the Saints period and talking about an injured Saint is you could just waterboard me.
We need a mashup of Dennis Allen talking about Kendre Miller versus the way he talks about Taysom Hill.
Seriously, I would talking about an injured young Saints player. Like I said, just take me to the basement and waterboard me instead of having me talk about it. That sounds awful. I don't really want to talk about Kendre, but he's an example, just like Marshawn Lloyd, where I will I liked Kendra, and I really like Marshawn Lloyd too. I like that whole pocket of those running backs before. The bet can change. And I think it's fair to say for sure, Kendra, the bet has changed.
Yeah.
But the bet has changed a little bit, maybe on Marshawn Lloyd. Because I kind of did think like AJ Dillon's so bad, they drafted this guy. Maybe he will be, play 35%.
I think that's still on the table though. That's the other thing. Like, what are we hearing, right? Like, because this is the Javonte thing. Remember when Javonte was going to get cut? Remember that? That was like a week ago. Javonte was going to get cut a week ago. Now, like, Peyton's like, oh my God, he's a completely different guy. Who could have seen this coming? Like, I don't know, doctors. He's coming off of a multi-ligament knee tear, and they played a whole season, and like then he dropped weight, and his knees were healthier.
Fat.
And he looks good. Like he's good. Like, I don't know. The Javonte was going to get cut stuff. I said at the time, I was like, this is pure beat writer speculation. This is someone saying, Javonte wasn't very good last year when you look at the numbers. Like, yeah, we know, man. We only look at the numbers. Like, we've been looking at the numbers since the season ended. Like, this is not news to us. Maybe it's like news to Denver Post readers, but it's not news to the fantasy community. Yet it was treated like news, which is a mistake. That's double counting. So, it's like then he comes in and it's like, oh, wow, he actually looks way better than he did coming off the torn ACL, MCL, or whatever. So, the Javonte stuff, I feel like you cannot just kind of throw away your priors and forget kind of where you were coming from on these things. You still want to be interpreting what you're hearing through the lens of what you already know about the player, and then if that news is adding to that or not. And I would classify the Marshawn Lloyd stuff as not really adding to what we already know. Like beat writers saying, I think these guys view Josh Jacobs as the clear workhorse. But we also have Coach Speak and Dex sharing all of these clips of them saying, we don't really believe in that. We believe in a committee. So right there, I'm already skeptical. I'm like, this dude's telling me his opinion, but that opinion kind of goes in the face of what the coaches are actually saying. Not that he's wrong, but I'm just like not going to like completely roll with that.
Yep.
And then he's also saying, I don't really foresee them using Lloyd as the clear number 2. I think he's going to have to earn it down the stretch. But Lloyd hasn't really been out there at practice. So
he just got back. He just got back like yesterday or 2 days ago or whatever.
So that's different than him running with the threes. If he's running with that's beat writers' main value to us as people super duper steeped in all the stats and all the news and where these guys are drafted and what the coaches said after they were drafted is what is happening today on the practice field. That's the main thing they're adding to us. Not like to everybody. To everybody, they're catching them up on a bunch of the stuff that we know.
Mm-hmm.
But to us, it's what's happening today. And nothing really has happened over the last few days with Marshawn Lloyd because he hasn't really been out there. So it's like the fact that Benjamin Albright was like, why are you asking me about Troy Franklin? That's a little concerning to me. He's like barely distinguishing himself from this dude Veal, the 6th rounder they drafted or whatever. Like, yeah, that on the practice field, that's like way more concerning. The fact that Rondale Moore's running with the threes is very concerning. I would like to hear more about that. Maybe we can get a Patriots reader, beat writer transferred to Atlanta, and we can learn more about Ray.
We need the Bills guys. We need the Bills guys because every other day I'm convinced a new Bills skill player is headed straight to the fucking Hall of Fame. Like straight to the Hall of Fame, dude. I don't even know
man.
Shavers
or Shavers. Yeah,
Shavers. I'm not even sure who that is. And like, dude, I'm 80 drafts deep in college football best ball. Nobody is grinding the niche bullshit college and these guys around the edges. It's more than me. Trust me. And I was like, pardon me, who is going to be awesome for the Bills? I'm like, he's not going to make the team, bud. How can he be so good if these other 6 wide receivers are so good? This doesn't make you guys are going to go undefeated if you believe all the Bills beat writers.
Yeah. Well, that's another. I mean, although Chase Claypool is in trouble. That's what I take from the Shavers side. If you're Chase Claypool or Marcus Valdes-Scantling,
MVS and Mac Hollins is the best outside blocking wide receiver we've ever seen, and those other guys are useless. But to the point, the difference is between what we get from a Falcons beat, right? We got that one thing, that one day about the Falcons wide receivers, like, oh shit. Like I kind of had penciled Rondale.
That was gold though.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
don't get a lot of that out of that. But like that to me, like when do you freak out? You freak out when veteran receiver new to the team is running with the threes. Ray McLeod, who's basically like a clone of that guy, is running with the ones.
Yep.
I'm out. I'm just out. Like
Sixth-round rookie Casey Washington is getting more ones reps than Rondale Moore. Is like, oh no, this is disastrous.
It's disastrous because like, what's the prior, or like the original bet is the original bet strong? No, he's never really done that much. He, he could easily just be like a backup receiver now. Is there any reason to expect him to like come on down the stretch? Like, no. He's a veteran on a second team. Like, there's no. But with Troy Franklin, am I panicking? No, I'm not panicking. He's a day 3 rookie. He's going to have to distinguish himself over the course of the entire training camp. Probably, he's going to probably not do anything for weeks and weeks. You're hoping that when Bo Nix is starting, Franklin gets a chance and their connection shines through at the NFL level, and he wins you a week down the stretch. So not that I'm taking Franklin a little lower. I'm taking Jalen McMillan a little higher.
Yes.
I am moving these guys around. I'm shuffling them based on what's happening in camp. But like the goal is still to find the guy who comes on down the stretch. It's just that like it's a little easier to do that if Todd Bowles is constantly talking about what an awesome receiver you are. But if you like the Todd, even that stuff, does Jalen McMillan today have the wide receiver 3 role locked down in Tampa? Like, probably not. He's probably still competing with Trey Palmer to like who would start week 1. Like, I don't know yet, but that doesn't matter. It's still I'm still moving McMillan up the ranks because it's pretty clear he's going to get a shot this year. Mm-hmm. And that's great. That's really great for his price.
The kind of Franklin McMillan comp is such a good one because I know it feel like this is kind of really the shining example of like it's so vibes based and like emotional, psychological, like you're playing psychological warfare with your goddamn self during this time of the year. Cause you're like, especially maybe if you're like me, the Broncos are pretty appealing, especially depending upon how your draft room goes, right? It's like, buddy, I might need the Bronco. Like I might need Nick's Franklin on this team or whatever. And so knowing that you got that in your back pocket, you liked maybe Troy Franklin as a prospect. Clearly the draft capital is not what we were hoping for, but such is life. And the wide receiver, like, look, I get Josh Reynolds is going to be an all-pro wide receiver this year, according to the Broncos guys. But like when that and Phil Jordan Humphrey and these guys are the competition, I'm comfortable making that bet. But again, the bet does change a little when probably the most locked in Broncos beat writer, say whatever you want about Albright, but like he's basically like, yeah, guys, he's literally nothing right now. But again, right now, that's the whole thing. This happens all the time. You show me a late round wide receiver that is a stone cold lock to not only start and play every snap in week 1 and be good for fantasy. You show me that, and I'll take him in every single goddamn draft.
Well, you had it last year in Puka, and we both didn't. So I don't know what happened there. I still am like, what?
The only thing that saved my ass last year from a horrible season of like player takes was I had saved so much drafters and DraftKings by the end of the summer that I finally got wise to Puka Nacua
and Kyron. Kyron.
So like I had I had boatloads of Kyron, but then I had enough Puka that it was like, Jesus. Nice. I mean, I just got saved, but Underdog did not get saved. With Puka specifically, Kyron, I had like 12. I got it up to enough. Nice. We got it up to enough Kyron that it was acceptable on Underdog, but like for me, it only saved my bacon on the other sites because of timing, really. But there are more often Troy Franklins than there are Puka Nacuas, and we're so in search of the next Puka Nacua that we're like, Jalen McMillan, oh my God, they keep talking about how awesome he is. Now he's a better bet to start week 1, and he is. And so what you just said is so spot on. I am upping my exposure to Jalen McMillan in like when I'm in slows and he's at ADP, like we're doing it because I didn't have as much as I probably wanted to. And anyway, even if we heard nothing about him, I think I just was a little underweight. Then you layer in this, like, okay, I think the bet's changed. The bet has like improved a little bit. Like he's a better shot to be good. He's a better shot to have a week 1 role. He's a better shot to, even more than those, he's a better shot to, all right, Trey Palmer really is going to still start week 1. Like we're never not going to see Jalen McMillan. Like we may not ever see Troy Franklin. But we're never not going to see Jalen McMillan.
Guys get redshirted and completely disappear. And so you're trying to go, what are the odds that this dude is like literally nothing all year, which for Troy Franklin is like a baseline rate of like pretty decent, that he's like literally is 18 zeros because he was a day 3 pick.
Yeah.
Even though it's a wide open depth chart.
Yeah. No matter what we think about the team situation, you also have to go back to, like you said, it's a day 3 wide receiver. Like I know I'm not trying to pick on Kimani Vidal, but the Kimani Vidal thing is the best example of all that. Troy Franklin and Kimani Vidal, honestly, are like the wide receiver and the running back version of the same fucking thing. So late round rookie player who I think we all kind of liked is part of why we're anchored to this thing. Like if, I don't know, if
I've taken,
I can't think,
I have a lot of Vidal. I haven't taken him very much recently.
right. But it was, we kind of like the prospect, and then they got dropped into a situation that was like, oh man, we could get things right out of the gate, and they could be, Vidal could be the man in the backfield. Troy Franklin could be maybe not the wide receiver 1, but like the wide receiver 2, who knows? Like Marvin Mims wasn't very good. Josh Reynolds, like who cares about these guys? He played with Bo Nix. We can have some narrative-based fun takes. But at the end of the day, the bet was still a 6th-round rookie running back and a day 3 rookie wide receiver on bad offenses, And so it was like, that's probably not going to be anything super like beneficial for best ball this year. Like that's the baseline expectation. They're not winning us Best Ball Mania, but then you do what you have to do, what you just said. Yeah, right. But then you have to do the thing that you said, the balancing act of, all right, so let's lay out this range of outcomes. When is this day 1 starter and the prospect that I thought he was, and he's a smash insta from day 1. And then and then you go all the way down the range, and you're to like, all right, well, what percentage of the time does this guy never play an NFL snap? Never play an NFL snap this season or ever, maybe for Kimani Vidal. Like that's the range. Like he's not an NFL football player too. He's a day 1 starter and good in the NFL. So but that hasn't changed. Nothing about that has changed, but you can like change the kind of percentages that you apply you're going across there.
You're going Vidal is worst case scenario, he's going to be like probably the RB3 behind Isaiah Spiller, I guess, because J.K. Dobbins got $50,000 guaranteed. He's unlikely to make the team. Like this is an extended tryout. He's coming off the Achilles. Like, he's brought in because Roman's got the familiarity with him, but like this isn't going to, Vidal's really got a much stronger situation than it appears. But then we go like, hey, J.K. Dobbins actually looks like pretty good. And he's getting reps with the ones, and Gus Edwards is out there. Gus Edwards is out of practice, and Vidal's like nowhere to be seen. He's like repped a little with Justin Herbert. There's videos of it, but basically he's not really repping with the ones. And that was his opportunity in some ways to kind of show us that like, okay, this guy's like really on their radar as a big part of the backfield, or at least like, someone that they have tagged as the potential to become a big part of the backfield over the season. And it doesn't really seem like that's the case. And Dobbins seems like he is going to make the team. And maybe he's healthier than I realized. And maybe like the Achilles, was it a partial tear and he's going to come back quicker? I have no idea, but I'm like starting to be like, maybe I just like misjudged how, healthy Dobbins was going to be able to be for this year somehow. Because he looks pretty healthy / he's doing things a healthy
offseason.
Yeah.
He looks better than last offseason. He was dragging his leg around, telling us he was 100%. And I watched the clip and I'm like, buddy, your one leg doesn't work. And this year, like he kind of looks fine. And
he kind of looks fine. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not like hammering Dobbins now. I am taking some more Dobbins, not like a ton, but I am taking some. And I'm not taking Vidal really at all. The thing too, I would note is that like feel like as we play this game, people are like, it's kind of like we're like the Wall Street traders. It's like buy, sell, sell, sell. But like you don't actually sell. You never sell. You already bought. Any teams that you bought are bought. You can't sell those teams. So like I'm at like 12% Vidal. That's too high. But I'm like, so now I'm going, well, I personally am at 12% Vidal. I basically was saying, I know this is risky. I know that he could be a total bust. I normally don't even like this type of bet because I want to avoid zeros. But man, this could be such not a zero, that I think it's worth like in the 150s, on builds where I generally am not going like a lot of hyper fragile. So I generally have like 5-6 running backs. Like maybe I can override a zero at running back, big swing. I've taken him sometimes with Gus. I've taken him sometimes with Dobbins, but more often he was just part of like a running back group with, he's one of the upside swings on it. Yep. Right. So I don't mind that I did that, but now information is coming in that is not a good bet anymore to make. And so I'm just going to, I'm not now going to make the bet at like 165. I'm going to have to do that like at 185 or 195 because I already have a bag. If I didn't have a bag, maybe I'd approach it differently. Maybe I would buy a little bit of discount. Maybe I'd go, oh, this is actually a time to make that bet everyone else is making at a cheaper cost, and I'll have like 3% of it or whatever. So the fact that you're still building out the portfolio from here, you can't get rid of those old teams, and then that is more reason to move off of takes that have changed. Like does Vidal have a 0% chance of mattering now? No. And I have 12% to date. So that would be great if he does.
Yeah.
Am I going to continually add to the position because maybe Vidal still could work out? No, that's not good. Like that's good process would be moving off of a take that has gotten worse because you still have access to the upside through the teams that you've already drafted. You don't have to double down when the situation has changed.
It's not sunk cost fallacy because none of these guys are sunk costs. So actually, I'll start there. That's the craziest thing about all this to our week one brain and like best ball landscape idea is like remember how chaotic the whole season is. So my favorite example, I tweeted about this honestly because I a lot of things that I tweet or write about or we talk about on the show is just me going through a mental health like booster. Okay. So like it's stressful when you have a big Kendre Miller.
If you're using Twitter as a mental health booster, buddy.
Oh no, dude, we turn off the notification. We turn off the notifications. I just got to type it out to make myself feel better. Okay. So we Twitter's the opposite of a mental health booster.
It's yet to. I've been on there for a long time, and it's yet to work as a booster.
0 times. You just got to close it and turn off the notifications after you click send. But I kind of went back and looked. I actually just like went back and looked for the mental health and then shared it on Twitter because I thought it was really interesting. And you definitely remember this. All the best ball bros who've been playing this for some time remember this. But the year Liam won Best Ball Mania 2, we always talk about the guy you need. And I think maybe it was Alvin Kamara in the first year. And then the next year, the like epitome of the guy you need was Rashaad Penny that season. Not only because he not only
you had to have
right Amon-Ra and they're kind of two different bets, but kind of interesting actually through the lens of this conversation that we're having here today. Penny was one of the single greatest disaster off seasons I can recall, but we like block that from our mind. Like we get to this time of year and we're just like, there's bad hype. I can't draft that guy anymore. And I got to draft the guys getting positive news or running with the ones or whatever. That summer, so Rashaad Penny was heading into his 4th year, and he was a first-round pick with the Seahawks, and so they had to decide on his 5th year, right? The 5th-year option, and naturally he hardly played in his first few seasons, so they were like, no, buddy, we're not giving you the 5th-year option. So, okay, negative number 1. Number 2, he's already not the starter. Chris Carson was the starter. He got a cleanup on his knee. He had previously torn his ACL in one of his knees, and he had to go in and get like another cleanup procedure. So he missed early camp stuff. Then all the early stuff is like, I believe it was DJ Dallas, not Travis Homer. I'll confuse. DJ Dallas and Travis Homer are the Spider-Man meme for sure. But
I mean, we're on the same team. Yeah,
they were on the same team doing the same goddamn thing, just being a thorn in our side for many years. Travis Homer, famously, the only other non-DeAndre Swift for Bears running back who did not play in the Hall of Fame game last night. Anyway, Rashaad Penny, cleanup procedure, right? Doesn't get the fifth-year option, missing time. They're telling us DJ Dallas is the passing down back behind Chris Carson. You're like, okay, so I got a straight early down thumper backup who hasn't done shit in 3 years. He kind of started like in the 12th or 13th round that year, if I'm recalling correctly, and it was a free fall all summer. By the end of the summer, is he going to get cut? He's getting Alex Collins. Remember Alex Collins?
Yeah.
Alex Collins is on the team, and they're like, Alex Collins is the RB2, and DJ Dallas is the passing down back. You're like, Rashaad Penny's going to get cut from this goddamn team. He played in the preseason. He was terrible. He played in the last game. They rested everybody, right? It was Hall of Fame game level stuff. And Rashaad Penny's playing in the final game with all the XFL players. And you're just like, fuck, dude, it's over. like this is it. All that Rashaad Penny I drafted earlier as the Chris Carson handcuff is useless. And guess what happens? He is the guy you need, the running back 1 overall in fantasy, not just in week 17, for the final month of the season. If you didn't have him, you didn't win shit in fantasy football and best ball, anything. And so, yeah, that's a Kyron level, Devontae Adams level unicorn. I get it. But it's an example that I wanted to like kind of remind myself as this time comes around that like, remember the point of this game. The point of this game is like, dude, we're going to look back in week 10 and even the shit we talk about here today, and we're just going to laugh. Troy Franklin and Kendre Miller and Kimani Vidal. Like Kimani Vidal might be on a practice squad, right? And we're just like, what were we doing, man? Like what? But that doesn't change the fact that doesn't mean drafting them was wrong. It just means like, keep in mind what we're doing here. When the upside, if you agree with what Pat said, like the upside case of Kimani Vidal outweighs all the aren't you worried? We all see the aren't you worried? We're not morons. But if the upside case is like, buddy, you got the workhorse Chargers, Greg Roman, Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, workhorse running back who catches passes in maybe an underrated Chargers offense in the 13th, 14th round. Does that sound good? Yeah, it does. So like balancing all of that with the negative news, with the fact that like, dude, so long as these guys make the team, it's never really over. Like it's never really over. Latavius Murray, that same season, was the guy I was drafting a lot in. He's the back of the Mark Ingram role.
He got cut.
He got cut. That's when Dobbins and Gus and Justice Hill blew out their knees that year.
That's right. He went to the Ravens.
For the Ravens. And it was Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray as the Ravens running backs. So again, these are outlier situations, but that's the point. When the season gets here, the chaos is going to play out. And just remember that like you're drafting these guys for the chaos. You're not just drafting them for like week 1, shit, he's inactive. You know who else was inactive week 1 last year? Devon Achane. We're drafting him in the 2nd round this year. Like there's so much anarchy that it's just really important, I think, to like level set with that. And we want to react, like you said, but the bets are changing. You need to identify to what extent they've changed, not say it's binary. He's a yes or he's a no now. And sometimes they are yes or no, but a lot of the times it's like, okay, he was going in the 150s. He should maybe be a last round pick right now, but he didn't lose every possible path to helping you win. It's just the bet changed and thus the price should change.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that's difficult, I think, as we move, this is kind of the crossover period as we move from like the early part of the offseason where it's like post-draft, it's a lot of hope. It's a lot of every rookie's going to be good. Every team's going to improve. And we're excited about a lot of players. No one's hurt yet. Then we cross
Justin Herbert. Except Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert, yeah. Well, that's why it's crossover, because now we have the Hopkins injury, the Herbert injury. Yeah, so we're actually starting to get injuries. We also had the Geno scare. So you're getting this. We're moving from a period where we're a lot more hopeful about a lot of players to one where we're going to become a lot more pessimistic, and then just also like bad things will happen that will change our perception and the reality as well. So, you know, a lot of the like we need to there's like we need to actually move a lot of these rookies down over the course of the summer because a lot of their situations will get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will get better, and then some of them will ultimately look like, holy crap, how did you get him in the 14th or the 15th?
Yes.
When, you know, having to take him in the 9th was, you know, that's a lot more difficult to build a team that crushes when you get him in the 9th instead of the 13th or something. So there was a reason we do this, right? There's a reason we're attacking the rookies, and the rookies were more expensive this year than they have been. So now when we get into training camp, we're going to have to we want to take in the information that's coming in and going, oh, actually this guy's like pretty far from mattering, and lower him in the rankings and take a little bit less of him because the bet has gotten worse. It doesn't necessarily mean it was a terrible bet to begin with, especially if you were kind of drafting a lot of rookies in general and shooting for that upside. Doesn't mean those previous teams are dead. But I think we're figuring out where to concentrate our fire a little bit more down the stretch on some of these rookie bets. The Penny example is interesting though, because it does remind me a little bit of like Khalil Herbert. You know, we're like, oh, what's this dude playing in the Hall of Fame game? It could be over. But like, I think Khalil Herbert's the best runner on the Bears.
He was good again. It's not like he ran 4 times for 6 yards. He was awesome again last night. Every time he's on the field, he produces.
Yeah. So like, I would love if Herbert dropped in price. Like if Herbert's actually one of those guys. I don't have a ton of Herbert. I'm like 4%. Because I'm like, I don't, you know, is he going to make the team? All the stuff everyone's worried about. But that's a situation where I'm like, oh, now you're just like more worried about the thing that we were already worried about. Like, and I can get this dude like in the 18th all the time. I would love that. That would seem great because like if he makes the team, because here's the thing with Penny, right? Seahawks were an effective running game. We knew they loved to run the ball. You know, they were good enough to where they could support a running back if they gave him the work. And Penny had shown us at times that he was very explosive. He could get healthy. He could be fun. Herbert is healthy, has been explosive, has been consistent as a rusher. It's like a good kind of early down grinder type, the type that they might ultimately decide that they really like with a rookie quarterback, that guy they can kind of lean on to keep the offense on schedule. Like
get what's blocked, unlike fucking DeAndre Swift.
What's blocked, yeah. Like over the course of the year, they might start to think, you know, it'd be more fun if we like didn't get 2 yards on this well blocked first down. You know, this is starting to get annoying.
Anybody that's ever played or watched or, you know, been to a practice or something, watching the offensive coordinator, or like you've seen Shanahan does this, like when we get a little behind the scenes where Shanahan, like, you know, these guys are so brilliant in like diagnosing the defense that he knows when the play should be a touchdown. My favorite is Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Lane's bounced around a lot, Tennessee and USC and Ole Miss and Florida Atlantic and all that, but he is the king of this. He knows when he has the perfect play call. And you like, then you get the behind the scenes sometimes where like they haven't even called, the quarterback hasn't even signaled the play and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, touchdown. And like they make the snap and he's walking down the sideline, like with his hands up in the air. You know what I mean? That is what like but there's a run game version of that too.
The chess game of the coverage versus the play call. Yeah.
The run game will happen too, where the offense, you know, they call a play and they're like, this is here. It's here. It's here. Just hit. And then DeAndre Swift bounces it instead of running off the guard's ass or whatever. And like the coaches on the sideline are just furious. And it's like, you know, there was a 10-yard play. It's not really that big of a deal, like to us and in the grand scheme of things, but to those coaches, that shit is huge. That's why Ken Walker has all these concerns, right? And it seems really stupid and really silly.
Because Walker has had a really good camp, and there was a report that he's looking like the kind of clear cut. It was who was it? It was an SI I forget, but they had a report that he was basically the clear-cut starter and that Charbonnet was looking more like depth. It was Albert Breer had this. And that's obviously good for Walker and bad for Charbonnet.
Mm-hmm.
But what has fundamentally changed for Charbonnet? He's still, it's still very clearly those two guys. He's got all the contingent value that he had. He is still a bigger, better pass catching resume and more consistent back than Kenneth Walker. I mean, Kenneth Walker's had 2 full seasons with a lot of carries in the NFL, and his success rates in both seasons have been extremely bad. This is not a consistent runner. He's a big play threat. Normally we like that a lot, but if we're saying like which guy's more likely to, carry the load, the larger, more consistent back or the smaller, more explosive back, not that Walker's like tiny, but he, Charbonnet's a big dude. So normally we would think that Walker would be like the explosive, like Aaron Jones kind of mixing in guy, and Charbonnet is going to, carry a big part of the load, right? So
like Rojo Fournette. Remember when the Bucks brought in Fournette? It was like Rojo was like this, clearly the more exciting, more talented runner, more talented athlete, but it's like he just doesn't do what Tom Brady and the offense wants. And Leonard Fournette is going to do it, right? He's going to block. He's going to run straight ahead. And we can hate it all we want, but such is life.
Well, and Rojo, I'm always thankful to Rojo that he took until the end of the season to lose his job. He gave us that season, and then then we got playoff Lenny. But but yeah, I mean it's kind of similar though. Charbonnet's not quite as that good in the passing game. Is just kind of a dump off outlet, but he's better than
like just do what we need. Yeah, you're not special.
But that's the other thing with Walker is he's not a very good receiver. He had a really bad receiving resume coming in, and he hasn't been much as a receiver as a pro. So, like, I'm glad that Walker's having a good camp, and it definitely changes my feeling on the bet a little bit. I moved Walker up, I moved Charbonnet down. But am I going to start like hammering Walker? If Walker were to go into the late 5th on this news, like, hell yeah, can't wait to fade him there.
Yep.
If Charbonnet drops to the 14th, 15th, 16th round, like, oh my God, we hammer, So it's just like, yeah, I was kind of hoping we would get news of like, this is a split. And then Charbonnet would jump into like the 9th round and I would have this big win. I don't have that, but I'm not hating the Charbonnet picks that I've already made. And he's a guy that like I lowered a little bit. I'm going to be taking less frequently now, but I'm probably still taking a decent amount of Charbonnet because you're like what you talked about where, the guy is bouncing it. Swift is going to bounce so many runs. Like they're going to imagine them like, we're in training camp. They're, no one can touch them. No one can hit these guys at all. When they get out there in the actual NFL football games, it's week 6. This dude turns on the tape for like the 6th week in a row, right? He's watching this dude bounce runs that he shouldn't have bounced. He's watching wide open holes that this guy should have hit. He's looking for the big play. We don't need the big play here. How many times do I got to say we don't need the big play? Like that kind of stuff builds up. It's like, Charbonnet's starting to look a little more appealing. Khalil Herbert is looking a little more appealing as a guy who just does what he's supposed to do. Like that can kind of change like the plans because these coaches are optimistic as well. Like they brought in Swift. They gave him way too much money. They're talking up what a weapon he is in the passing game. He is pretty good in the passing game, but he also has some flaws. And over the course of the season, I think it's okay to go, I think Khalil Herbert is good. I think DeAndre Swift is not a good early down runner. I think over the course of an entire season, Khalil Herbert, provided he makes the team, will eat into that workload and potentially could displace him as the early down runner in a similar way to the way Chuba Hubbard displaced Miles Sanders, who had that big contract. He's got the money. We can't bet against Miles Sanders. He just got paid. Don't you know that? We can bet against those guys. So those are some of the best bets that we can make. Devin Singletary can come in and displace Dameon Pierce because Devin Singletary does everything well. And over the course of the season, Coaches tend to like that. Coaches tend to want to lean on that. Coaches tend to get sick of the thing that would have won them the game not happening, and then they turn to a guy they feel like they can trust more. So if we think that there's a guy like that, and to me, Herbert would be one of those guys where I feel very confident that he does a thing well. I think his best case scenario is staying on the Bears because he does a thing well that the starter doesn't do well. So there's like a very good path for him.
Mm-hmm.
You do have a small out where maybe he lands in a good situation if it gets cut. That generally makes me pretty nervous, in the same way that I was talking about coaches wanting to be able to trust their guys. Someone joining the team very late is going to put him behind the 8 ball, and it could be a disaster. So I really would like Herbert to make the team. But, they don't have any depth behind, outside of Homer, I guess, but they don't have any running depth behind those two guys because everyone else is hurt. And they had someone just get hurt right before they came or retire, I think. Who did they just lose? I forget. They just lost someone before the Hall of Fame game. So they didn't. Was it Cohen going back with them?
No, he's on the Jets, but
that's
the first thing. Bears running back retire when I searched was Tariq Cohen, who ironically was on the Bears, but not.
Yeah, it was. Maybe it was an injury. Anyway, there was very little depth behind those guys. Nathan Yonke pointed this out, which is why it's in my mind. But the fact that those guys played is a little less concerning than it otherwise. It's not good. I'm not saying don't worry about it. It means nothing. But it's not like, oh, they're definitely getting cut, or because Khalil Herbert's had a good camp, and he's been, he was listed as the co-backup with Rashaad. Rashaad talked about how the roles still aren't set yet. So I'm still I'm still somewhat open-minded to the idea that maybe Herbert does win that kind of secondary running role, or at least makes the team as the RB3, and maybe he's not active on game days. Maybe it's Homer because Homer comes in and catches passes. But kind of in a penny way, I think Herbert is good enough to make some noise over the course of the full season.
I totally agree. I think Khalil Herbert might be one of the better examples of this whole conversation. And it's never this simple. We're never this with him. I think it's fine, but in general, we're never this good at who is really good and who is really bad. There's so many shades of gray on a lot of that stuff. And a lot of times we're talking about young players where we're really speculating how good they are at the NFL level, right? The Troy Franklins and those, we really have no idea. But with Khalil Herbert, he makes for one of my favorite things that honestly, I think I've probably gotten at. Well, we'll see if it's better if Khalil Herbert's not in the NFL in 2 years, which if it were up to the Bears, that would probably be apparently the case. But I feel pretty darn confident to just say, look, it's weird. The Bears backfield is weird. The way they handle Khalil Herbert is weird. The fact they paid DeAndre Swift all this money is weird. I don't really get it. And when I try to project touches or project a depth chart, or I try to come up with a scenario like you did, I get that someone would say that's it. That's the case for this thing. But again, going back to our week 1 versus week 17, week 1 brain type stuff. This is the Khalil Herbert thing is very much week 1 brain. But in multiple ways, in the way that you just mentioned, where he's just good. I feel extremely confident that Khalil Herbert is just a good NFL running back. He's not Christian McCaffrey, but he's not CEH, right? And there's a lot of value in just knowing I'm drafting a football player who, if he gets on the field, he's good at football. That sounds really simple, but it's actually really hard in this game to figure that out. We have to pay really high prices for confirmed, locked in, really good football players in this game.
Yeah.
Once you reach a certain round, you're paying for a lot of speculation, projectable volume, projection, youth, hope. We're paying for a lot of that stuff. And so when I can get a cheap price on a player that I know is good, it's not that I don't care about the other stuff, because that's definitely not true. But to a certain extent, I just plug my nose and say, he's good at football. There's a bunch of different paths to this working out. There's certainly paths to it failing. And that's why he goes at pick 180 or whatever. If there were not all these paths to failure and not all this weird uncertainty around the Bears, do you think Khalil Herbert would go at pick 180? No, because look where DeAndre Swift goes. It's the double counting thing. It's I know he's good. The Bears situation is a great one. I want the Bears running back. Don't we all? Look at their offense. I want them. So I don't want to double count the concerns against him. And this is the big thing that I have to keep reminding myself too. And I think everybody probably has to keep reminding themselves is like, by the way, football, pretty violent game, guys. Like dudes get hurt. Cam Akers somehow is the only guy who, suffers injuries in his back and serious injuries in his back in a couple of months. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to miss time. 60 something quarterbacks played last year. So that's quarterbacks. Think about how many running backs played. I don't have that number because it's probably such an astronomical number. Nobody's keeping track of it. So many running backs are going to get on the field. J.K. Dobbins got hurt in week 1 last year. We just talked about J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Justice Hill creating a path to Latavius Murray being relevant. So much chaos is going to play out that I just want to have guys like Khalil Herbert and Zack Charbonnet. That's like, I know what I'm going to get. I could get zeros, of course, but I know what I'm going to get if something favorable happens. And like, there's not that, like, Kimani Vidal needs like a bunch of favorable shit to happen and he needs to be good. I like the guys where when the chaos plays out in their favor, it's like, this was easy. This was so smooth. I didn't have to like guess on a bunch of stuff. And I got a good football player in a good situation because something broke their way.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And there's like this, one of the sort of a dynasty thing here as we think about like the value of, the way stuff gets priced where, like in dynasty, especially at receiver, you see that like, the receivers with the, okay, Cortland Sutton, right? Going in the top 100 of best ball, just barely, he's sneaking in, he's in the 90s. But like, if you were to go take Cortland Sutton and try to trade Cortland Sutton for like Jalen Polk, no, that's not happening, and it's like, well, why not? Like, Jalen Polk's probably not going to outscore Cortland Sutton this year. Sutton's not that old, he'll get probably a couple more years, of production. Like, isn't Cortland Sutton like more likely to outproduce Jalen Polk over the next couple years? Like I probably, but like there's this, yes, but I've pricing this like small chance that Polk's the nuts over, so that he's one of the guys that you wanted to have, that he emerges as this huge producer, and young, so that like I'm getting production and I'm going to have future production to move, which is so valuable in Dynasty, right? There's that small chance. And Sutton's chance of that is at 0, partly because he's not young, but partly it's like, we know there's no like additional. So when you get down into the late rounds of best ball, I think there's something similar happening where it's like, how much like hope can we, even if it's like just a little chance of happening, like, is there a chance this guy is him, and Vidal, right? Like one of the reasons I liked him was like, yeah, maybe he is him. I don't know. I really don't. So if the situation looks that maybe he could emerge and take this over, if, there's a small chance that he's him and that happens to be the case, then all of a sudden this is a huge win. As the situation gets worse and as the chances that he is that guy get a little worse, I'm like, okay, now this is more of like an 18th round type of bet, and I'll wait until it gets there before I take any more. Herbert's not like that. Herbert's like, he's not him. We know he's not him. He's had a chance to be him. That's not going to happen. But what he could be is a good enough back in a really good situation, kind of like Pacheco, Chuba. We've made this bet repeatedly with Deontay Foreman. Like it's the Deontay Foreman bet. It's like, this guy is good enough. The team is not that interested in. They're like, the NFL also doesn't find this profile all that exciting. Like, good enough early down runner, not dynamic in the passing game, not like super explosive, but just like gets it done in a chunk play way. Can trust him in short yardage. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Like, we'll keep him around, but he's not going to like what we build it around. But over the course of the year, maybe he ends up seeing a lot more work than expected because, they can lean on him when they need to. So to me, it's like, it's not a bet you can get really excited about, but to help fill out running back rooms and stuff like that, some of these guys were like, they're good. They're in good enough situations where that can shine through. it does have some utility in best ball. It's maybe more of a best ball thing versus a redraft thing too, where it's like, this is one of the things I've been trying to think through this summer is when I'm drafting best ball picks, sometimes I'm drafting the guys that I think have the best chances of being $300 waiver ads in week 9, right? Like who can be like a big waiver ad that people are super excited about for that week. Like once we're in the thick of it, once the grossest stuff starts to become really exciting, like, oh my God, this guy might get, 15 touches this week. We gotta go nuts for him and get him on waivers. Like that type of play, right? It's like why I'm still drafting Ricky Pearsall and stuff, because I could definitely see when we're spending a ton of fab to get Ricky Pearsall. Like that scenario is extremely obvious. So Herbert and some of these guys where we're betting a little bit on the talent, even though they're incomplete talents, very much qualify for that kind of thinking.
So this is where I do think it gets interesting. The person probably listening is like, all right, I'm seeing it, right? I get what you guys are saying. I don't want to go panic and just think only about week 1. But how do you balance it? Is I think, from a practicality perspective, when we go into our drafts or of course we're like updating rankings and stuff, but that's also like, I don't want to get into a rankings debate, but if we're going full therapy session, like this time of year is also really fucking painful for rankings conversations. Cause it's like I got him 175. Would you like him to be 183? Like, sure. Like what? I don't actually care. Probably what's happening in your draft is actually dictates where, right? You guys we built tools and you built tools that are telling you that the static exact ranking is not the fucking answer. It's a lot of other things that play into it. So like I said, I don't want to get into it. And then he gets into it. But there is some form of like, if we want to make it really, really simple from a rankings perspective, is like, okay, the Kendre, Vidal, Charbonnet, Herbert, all these guys, it has changed. And then, so the flip side of that is Chase Brown, Andre Yoshivas, I'm going to forget other, Deneric Prince. The bet has substantially changed for Deneric Prince. Everything that you said is 100% spot on, but like it's changed. He when you're running with the 2s for 2 straight weeks in camp, you have a much better chance of being the 2 and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. So it has changed. Will it play out that way? I have no idea, but I would like to find out with Deneric Prince on my on my teams to find out.
Right.
But how do you think about, right? You're like, all right, maybe I was drafting that guy before. I was drafting Kimani Vidal before. I think he should be cheaper now. At what point do I buy back? At what point do I just totally not take him at all and like cool off and wait and see and get my Prince now, get my Khalil Herbert now, get my Jordan Mason now? You know what I mean? Like, how do you, when you go into your drafts, think about that? Because I think we're all doing that going in, and like it's very much an art, not a science. But I'm like, guys I want to cool on, guys I still am interested in, but the bet has changed and they need to be cheaper. When do I buy? Right? Like, when am I just comfortable taking 40% Kendre Miller into the season, which is welcome to my life. Like, how do we balance all that? Is when we're on the clock in drafts, it is tough. I'm not sure there's a right answer, but it is very tough.
So with the Chase Brown, Zach Moss one, right? Like I have currently 6% Moss, 12% Brown. I didn't have as much Brown as I liked. I was kind of
coward. Yeah.
I know. I was kind of cowardly on Brown. It was a bit of I've just been rug pulled on this profile a lot. And like, I'm gonna.
Even the one play we watched that was really good last year is not enough to
exactly.
To call in.
I'm like, this is the ultimate like fantasy Twitter hive mind wish casting and not gonna work. Like just the poster child of this. But I think it might work this time.
I know.
So,
finally.
So I was probably at 10%, and I was probably at like 7% Moss, right? Like a week and a half ago. So are my Moss teams dead? No, I don't think they're dead. He's still got the contingent value. He could still be the goal line back. He could still be the kind of pass catching back. Like, he's still live at the range that I drafted him. but I think those two should flip in ADP now, and I'd rather have Brown straight up. And
yeah, I moved him ahead.
Yeah, I moved him ahead too. So I'm being much more aggressive about getting Brown. And I'm basically not taking Moss at all because, especially on underdog where ADP moves slowly, I'm just gonna like load up on Moss. I'm making an effort to reach for Moss. I'm taking him over Brian Robinson, Tony Pollard, Devin
Brown, you mean?
Singletary. Brown,
Taking
I mean,
Brown.
yeah, taking Brown over all those guys. I'm not taking Moss like at all. I'm taking Brown over all those dudes. I'm not going crazy because I'm doing a bunch of drafts, so I'm not taking him over like Jonathan Brooks or anything.
Yeah,
but I'm still making an effort to get him. I'm not getting him in every draft. I entered BBMs, after the news broke, and got him in about a fourth of the BBMs that I entered specifically to draft him because someone else was doing what I was doing.
Sounds like Malik Washington in the big board for me. Every time I got in, everybody sees that Erik Beimfohr's in here. I better queue up Malik Washington in the 16th round. Like, you fuckers are doing the stack sniping thing. Like, I'm in this for fun to draft the one guy. There's one player in this whole player pool I want to draft, and you fuckers won't even let me ever have him on any of my teams. They see you in the lobby and they're like, wonder what Pat's goal is in this draft. It's like probably to get Chase Brown. So
well, it's really to get Drake Maye, but Chase Brown is definitely on my mind as well. But if that happens, I'm still at 25% Chase Brown in those drafts. So I'm still going to get my, even if I get sniped 3 out of 4 times, I'm still getting my exposure up, and that's how I'm playing it. I'm aggressively targeting Brown now while he's still in the one team. I mean, he was just way too cheap. So my exposures are not going to be as good as like yours and Pete's and Ben's and all the guys who are a little bit more courageous on the Chase Brown play. But they're still going to be like pretty good. Like, I think I'll end up at like 15+% on Brown, and most of it will be pick 100 or later.
Yep.
And so scrambling, being like, I messed this one up. I should have played this one a little bit. I should have taken on a little bit more of the risk to get that upside. And I'm going to get this. I'm going to be aggressive as the price rises because I missed the boat a little bit on this. I can't completely make up for it, but I can like at least mitigate it. And then on the other side, fortunately, like Moss scared me a little bit. I had a hard time clicking him over some of the other guys in that range.
Mm-hmm.
And now so I don't have this huge bag, but I still probably want to be underweight unless he falls to kind of where Brown was. So
I think he might.
And if he does, then I'll start taking him again there. And then I'll be overweight on both at decent prices on both. I didn't get the best of it on either back, but
you might on Moss. You might get the best.
Yeah, maybe I do on Moss.
I think there's a good chance you'll be lukewarm on Chase Brown. Like, you definitely got some team, right? You got plenty of teams of the best of it. And then
I did take him. I didn't completely fade him. I like 10%. I just,
like you had 10%. Yeah, you're just, a flat. So you and Leone are over here with your 10% of everybody teams.
Don't come on, man. Come on, man. I got 30% Jalen Warren. Don't tell me.
I actually do think it was. I actually kind of like what you said there. I'm joking about it, but talked yesterday with Davis, I think it was. But anyway, just about like some little things like that, like growth in my game, our game, even the best ball industries kind of game. Like some guys like Chase Brown is a great example of that. A couple of years ago, I think we all would have just like, price be damned, risks and concerns be damned. We just pile in. It's like, dude, it's the Bengals. We liked him as a prospect. Look at all these numbers. Zach Moss, buddy, what are you talking about? Zach Moss, you must be crazy. I'm not worried about that guy. Let's take him 6th round. Chase Brown, who gives a shit? Like, it's hyperbole, but like we probably would have been like 3 years ago. We probably would have been like, who gives a shit? Like, I don't care. See, dogs are letting you know about Chase Brown. He's got that dog in him. But I think the growth, like, we can argue about should you have had 10, 15, 20%, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But like, you were willing to say, this is the kind of guy I really like. Like, historically, I really like. But I was willing to be open to like some of these risk factors that I used to just scoff at, honestly. And I do think that's
because zero
growth
floor matters.
Yeah,
it's because floor matters in best ball. That's why I think that's why it's like, because we're not necessarily getting better at fantasy football, we're getting better at best ball.
Correct. I haven't drafted any redraft leagues. I haven't drafted the main event. Yeah, I know you guys are kicking that off, ship chasing and stuff. Once I get into some main events and stuff like that, I'm not fucking drafting Zack Moss, and I will be very interested in drafting a ton of Chase Brown. But again, like you said, I was bringing that redraft brain, I think, over to best ball too much. Whereas now, like we're talking about this week one versus like this chaos stuff, is like the chaos doesn't only play out in the young guys' favor. The chaos can play out in anyone's favor. That's how football works. James Conner scores 30 points in week 17 every fucking season, and I fade him every fucking season. and I pretend to be like, oh, week 17 is all that matters. But I was biased towards the certain types of players. I pretended that week 17 only mattered for them, and I think that is definitely growth in my game. So James Conner is going to get hurt this year because now I'm drafting him. No. But I
had to promise Pete and Ben that I wouldn't try to get them to take Brian Robinson over Ramadan. I was like, don't worry, I won't do it. Before they hadn't brought it up, I was just like, just so you guys know, like, I do remember how to play redraft.
You can't take your best ball brain over. You
can't. You gotta leave it.
It's not growth if you fuck up one format and just to save the other one. Yeah,
right. I understand that we want breakout profiles a lot more. Yeah, but Brian Robinson's such an awesome best ball pick. Like he's locked into a number 2 role at worst, 1B, right? He could be the 1A. He could just be the 1. You know, like that's from a best ball perspective. I'm like, I'm getting so much floor for this price. And then is there ceiling? Like, yes, he's with a mobile quarterback. The offense could take a step forward. He could be the lead back. The back behind him is way up there in age and wasn't efficient last year. You know, like, this could be his backfield. He actually flashed a little bit as a pass catcher, which shows at the very least that he can get moving down the field, you know, even if he's not going to get a ton of pass catching work this year. So anyway, so like that is a bet that I like in best ball. Will I take it to redraft? Hopefully not. Hopefully I can leave it because as far as a breakout bet goes, like Chase Brown is a breakout bet. That's a guy who could, you know, he flashed breakaway ability. He was a pretty interesting prospect. He's super athletic. He was a workhorse in college, you know, not a perfect prospect and day 3 guy. Yep. So floor is really low, but we're shooting for ceiling. We don't have to worry about, we'll cut him if we need to cut him. If you cut your 10th round pick or whatever, it's okay. Right. But if you get a 0 from your 10th round pick, it's not okay in best ball. That's kind of why I was like playing it a little bit more risk averse with Chase Brown. Cause I was like, God, like if they bring in P. Ryan and he's the number 2, like this is Penny. We did this last year with Penny, right? I did this 2 years ago with Rojo. Like it hurts your teams. It really does when you don't get anything from like a 10th, 11th, 12th round pick. But we're getting information now that like those worries were overblown for Chase Brown. And so I'm trying to move because like, okay, what is Chase Brown, the bet that we have now, like where would he be overpriced? You know, to me, that wouldn't really happen until probably the 80s.
Yeah.
So
the Warren range.
The Warren range. That's where I'd be like, okay, this is we're kind of baking in a lot of the upside now. So, because we still don't know if he's that good. We still don't know if he's going to play on passing downs, like compared to a guy like Jalen Warren, compared to a guy like Jonathan Brooks, even compared to like more stable.
Aaron Jones. Yeah.
Aaron Jones, James Conner, even Najee. Like that's where I'm like, But if you're offering him to me after that, you know, can Brown kind of fail and still be an okay pick in the 90s? And by fail, I mean he's just in like a gross committee with Zack Moss. Like that can still work. They can still work out in the 90s, you know? So it's like trying to figure out where the floor, like how low the floor is for the price as you get excited about the ceiling. Like I'm drafting Moss for the ceiling, but I'm drafting Brown for the ceiling, but where has the floor case changed to? And I think the floor case has moved up. Like he's not going to be buried. He's not going to be not really a part of the offense. He's not going to be the clear backup to Moss. Like that stuff seems just not very likely anymore. So now it's that the floor is they sign P. Ryan after he gets cut, and it's a gross 3-way committee, and he gets touches, but he kind of only gives you like a couple weeks of use. That hurts in the 90s for sure, but maybe you survive it, and he's also, by the way, not really in the 90s yet. He's like, I'm still taking it like 103, 104 kind of vibe. So there I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's like my RB4, he's my RB3, and I'm taking another running back right after him. I think I can build around this not being perfect. Like the upside isn't fully priced in still.
And I actually think that is a great like additive point to kind of the topic of conversation, where a lot of the week one brain idea is like, I really want this thing to feel perfect to start the season. And like everybody, I know what I'm getting from every single pick. It's kind of that redraft brain. Like when we first started doing best ball content, when the first year, like the wide receiver apocalypse summer or whatever with chip chasing and stuff, where we would have these conversations where everybody like wanted to fill out their starting lineup, in a best ball draft. And it was like, I need to feel like I got everything I needed in this draft. And we've evolved a lot, obviously, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, look at the running back, look at the running back ADP. The market has changed from that stance, but still there's right now that feeling of, right, the Ken Walker, Zack Charbonnet thing, the DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert thing, the whatever, pick your backfield, where I feel uncomfortable putting a bunch of different running backs together when like I can't really say what does this look like in week one, like because I might have like just 5 backups in my running back room, and that feels really uncomfortable. But like that's also the point of best ball, is like you don't need perfection, man. And like backup, the term backup running back is maybe one of the most, or starting running back, definitely workhorse running back, are like the most misused terms in all of fantasy football. Like there's like 2 of them.
Right.
Like Christian McCaffrey.
For some reason, Rashaad White's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not so sold that we keep talking about Saquon's going to be the CMC level workhorse, and Will Shipley and Gainwell keep playing with the ones. And it's like, I don't know if that's bullshit, but yeah, it's probably CMC. And then I would project Rashaad White to play the most, him and Saquon. It's like the workhorse thing is, when people say workhorse, they really mean like 70%.
Yeah,
is what they really mean nowadays. It used to be 98, right? It did used to be a real workhorse. But so what does that mean? That means there's a shitload of NFL running backs playing snaps, getting the ball, scoring touchdowns, and it's going to play out in crazy ways. Both of our friend Ben Gretsch uses the term layering, the points layering, and I love that phrase because it's a way to like encapsulate the kind of chaos of the whole season. And my favorite example, now this is cumulative scoring, but he's a member of probably all of the Discords, but the Spike Week Discords, Dorito is his last name, but he won the Drafters Best Ball Championship last year for $300,000. And he had multiple whiffs on there. So one thing people are always so worried about missing on picks, and like you're actually probably, even when you think you're not, getting a 0, you're probably going to find some zeros on your team. That's just how football works. But the most valuable pick on his team to me, he had Kyron, he had Achane, he had Mostert, and he had CD. He got to play the hits to win a cumulative score. But once we established the 5-6 guys that you have to have in a total points scoring format, there's these like underrated MVPs that step up. And it's the layering effect. They didn't really score that many fantasy points, but when you needed them, when Kyron missed time, when Achane had his 3-point game, you had this other guy who scored 25. And he only did it twice, and he was only the starting running back for a couple of weeks. But you needed that dude, and it layered in at the perfect time. We would love for it to be in week 17 on Underdog, right? But it doesn't always work out that way. And Donta Foreman, RIP. I'm not sure the career might be ending based on the.
No, I think he's good.
He's fine. I haven't read. I just saw at the hospital.
I think he returned. No, he returned to camp. It was. I think it was a stinger.
Oh well, that's good because it sure seemed quite scary.
It did. Yeah, he was taking. He got X-rays. Yeah, I think he was back at camp.
That's good. So that's good news. Also, I was drafting some Dante Foreman, so it's even better news. But last year, if you recall, he was on the Bears to this Khalil Herbert's and Rashaad and everything conversation and Travis Homer, and he popped up as the starting running back on the Bears for like 3 weeks or something like that, and posted multiple 20-point games.
Dude, he's done this was 3 years. He did that with the Titans, did that with the Panthers, he did it with the Bears. Like, and now he has a chance to do it with the Browns. Like, this dude, I don't know why the NFL just decided, like, no one's allowed to keep this guy. You're only, like, everyone gets Dante Foreman for like 6 games, and then you have to pass him on. Like, I don't know why this is happening to him. He's a good running back.
We have to do this Zeke and Dowdle and Gus and Dobbins shit. Yeah. And there's these guys floating around the league every year. Just like, why can't we just have them on one of these good teams? I coined, oh my God. Hamlet is his name. Another Discord member likes Dante Foreman. I coined him the cockroach is what Dante Foreman is, because no matter what you do, no matter what the NFL does, you can't get rid of that fucker. He's coming back. And I mean, that's just look at the last week is another example. The guy did look like he was paralyzed at practice, and he's back at camp like two days later. You can't keep this guy out of fantasy relevance. He's going to have a 25-point game.
The way it's going to go is once he's 30, he's gonna be the established. He's gonna get some contract and be the established week 1 starter. He's gonna go around 6, and then he'll bust.
Yes, that is so true. Zeke and Dowdle are gonna bust, and Jerry's gonna back up. They're gonna let Dak go, right? They're gonna pay CD, and they're gonna let Dak go, and they're gonna give Foreman 3 years and $30 million.
Yes,
and he's gonna be absolutely useless.
29 years old. Yeah.
But anyway, most of that's nonsense. But he was like this sneaky MVP of a best ball, and people look back and they're just like, oh yeah, Dante Foreman's on the team. I think he had a good game or something like that. But it's like, if he didn't have Dante Foreman, that team finishes like 15th and not first, which is pretty gargantuan monetary difference between the two. And so just one like little unique event, but again, to the like kind of pulling all of it together with the week 1 versus week 17 versus putting these rooms together.
A guy. Because this is the guy that came to mind when you're talking about layering and week 1 brain, and where I'm wondering if maybe I have week 1 brain or if I'm doing this correctly. I don't know. Trey Benson. Trey Benson's the guy, right? Yeah. He was going more like in the early 100s, and you're getting the hype on not just Connor, who we've gotten the hype on, but Amari DiMercato has gotten some hype in the passing game. Michael Carter was talked up by one of the beat writers there as a potential passing down guy. So you have Benson, who doesn't seem to have done a ton to gotten, Coach Peak Index had a clip where they asked Jonathan Gannon if Benson needed to work on pass protection to get on the field. And he was like, no, he basically needs to work on everything. He was like, but it wasn't quite that pessimistic, but he was like, no, it's not pass protection. It's just getting better every day. And then he listed a bunch of things running backs can get better at, including pass protection. But he's like, basically like, he's a rookie. I need to see him improve. That's what his takeaway was. But it's like, it's not that he's got it. We need to trust him in pass protection. I don't think he's even to that point yet. So that's obviously concerning. He's gone pretty high. He's kind of gone in a range that assumes some kind of standalone value. That standalone value, it does not seem to exist, and he should really be going more as like a handcuff. And I was taking him a decent amount early. I'm at 7% on underdog, so it's not like I have this big fade position on him, but I haven't been taking him much recently. We're about 10 picks behind ADP in the LegUp ranks. But I still got him ahead of Austin Eckler. Okay. I'm like, man, but I mean, those are probably pretty similar types of bets in a sense where I'm like, what am I hoping from Eckler? I'm hoping he's going to kind of layer in some weeks for me early in the season. So if I have Jonathan Brooks, if I have, some, I don't know, like if I just feel a little bit weaker at running back to where I could kind of use, okay, I know I'm getting some early season production here. And then I'm going to pair Eckler with like some later backs like Ty Chandler and Marshawn Lloyd and get some of that later season upside. Or, if I've got Brian Robinson or Najee Harris or Ramondre Stevenson or David Montgomery, then all of a sudden Benson starts to be more appealing than an Eckler. But most people are just taking Benson ahead of Eckler. They're not close in ADP. So that's where I'm like wondering if I've gotten too bearish on Benson. At the same time, we were fairly bullish on him early. The news has broken in a negative way. So I do think we probably want to discount on Benson at this point, but he's one where I think we could look back and be like, no, he was just the dude you wanted actually, because Connor got hurt. He was really good. The fact that they didn't trust him on August 2nd was not important, and you played it too scared. Like I could see it playing like that. It could also being like he was a third round rookie, and you took Tyrion Davis Price 2.0 in.
You took the next Mike Norvell running back, and you expected him to not be the Mike Norvell committee, back in the NFL. He's got to be one of the best examples. I'm glad you brought him up, and I moved him down not too long ago, and I need to move him down again. So I'm also glad you brought that up, because I think the bet. It's just my 2 cents. Someone could disagree. I do think the bet has substantially changed with Trey Benson, and that's important to right? And so it's not just like his raw ADP, and like it's definitely types of teams you should stick him on, like you said. And I was definitely not fading him before, but I've really just been taking Connor and totally fading Benson for the last while in terms of the Arizona backs, because I think I just think that the gap, I like kind of like you said, I think Chase Brown and Zach Moss should flip. I think obviously Connor was always going ahead. I think the gap needs to be much more significant between the two. It needs to be pretty substantial. Like why is the gap between I understand the Ken Walker news, but like, why is the gap between Ken Walker and Zack Charbonnet that large, but the gap between James Conner and Trey Benson is not that large? I don't really know that they're that different.
I have Charbonnet above Benson now. He's one of the guys above him.
And so that's exactly what I was going to say is, again, the bet has changed. This is the week 1 brain versus week 17 brain. Trey Benson is not like, he doesn't become undraftable.
No.
That's the difference. The difference in this time of year and the week 1 brain conversation is like, we should identify where this player should go. And so you could say he should go in this spot, and I'm not going to get any of them because he's not going to fall to that point. But that didn't make him undraftable, right? That's how I feel about most of these running backs, quite frankly. They should now be at a certain price, and it's okay to say I'm not taking him until they get to this.
I think he gets there. I think Benson falls.
I think he's going to keep falling. Yeah,
that's
what have some patience. Everybody should just have some patience with Trey Benson. Both like your expectations for him, and wait till he falls a little bit. I think it should. Yeah, after Charbonnet, Ty Chandler. Yeah, like he's now kind of a handcuff. He's James Conner needs to get hurt probably for him to ever be worth anything, but that has value. That like
I still have him above Chandler, but that's an interesting one because Chandler I think is a really good pick.
Yeah.
And
so
I could
after Sharbs for sure.
I could see him having after Chandler. I think the bet on the offense of like this offense could be much more fun.
Yeah. So but like a Marshawn Lloyd, like what's really Marshawn Lloyd would need, and maybe Benson needs 2 injuries to become like truly the guy if they don't trust him in. If DeMercado is the passing down back or something. Benson can still be really good for fantasy. Again, the Rashaad Penny point, he wasn't playing passing downs that when he was, you don't, we want the whole thing. Like we want the whole kit and caboodle to like really, really, we want Kyron to like really, really smash, but like, it's not over if you don't get that, but that's the price thing is like, when I think about like definitely the Benson conversation, but really all of these guys, we can talk about like where should we rank them and where should they go and how far should they fall and how should they be priced relative to their teammate. What it's really about is who goes around them. Yeah. And it's like the Charbonnet conversation is important. Ty Chandler conversation is important. Eckler conversation. All of those guys. Dowdle, Zeke. Like I really, really like Tyler Algier. And like what substantially is the difference between Trey Benson Tyler Algier. Like if they both need injuries to be smashes and they're both in offenses that we're excited about, like I don't see that significant. So anyway, I'm not saying you need to wait till Algier's off the board to take them, but I'm just saying I need to think about, okay, the bet has changed. We've identified that. Cool. Now where does his bet now fit? Right? Like the Kimani Vidal one is kind of a little bit easier where I feel at every passing day where they don't talk about Kimani Vidal in camp, I'm like, this becomes more like a 17th round pick every single day, when I used to think it was more like a 13th round pick or whatever, the guys that he went around. That's the Benson thing. Like now I need to establish like what is he like? Like where do I feel comfortable taking him amongst those backs? And I think that's really like the week 1 versus week 17 conversation is the trickiest part, because from a week 1 perspective, there's a lot of backs I would rather take over him. Like it's completely a key. You're not getting shit from Trey Benson in week 1. It's unless James Conner gets hurt in the next month. So like it's over. But those guys, Rashaad Penny and Sony Michel famously got cut during the preseason and was like the RB2 that year to Sony Michel or to Rashaad Penny during the fantasy playoffs. He was just smashing on the Rams. Like balancing that is really, really hard. But I always try to think about like, all right, let's just line him up against his positional peers and be like, what's the Charbonnet bet? What's the Eckler bet? What's that? And like, okay, where does Benson fit? And I think he needs to fall probably quite a bit. But that also goes back to what you said before. Like, look, you took him. I was taking him too. We were taking some Zach Moss. We were taking some whoever, like, Jermaine. The bet has changed for Jermaine Burton with the Cincinnati Bengals.
A little bit.
A little.
Just a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
But day one, with every passing day, he does not appear to be a starting wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. Right. On day one. Every day we learn a little bit more about that. But again, he's not undraftable. No, he's absolutely not undraftable. I'm going to take him.
ADP on Burton. So yeah, it's gotten a little bit more bearish, but
yeah, but it's not over. Comparing it's over for week 1, comparing it's over for week 1 versus it's over as a best ball pick is like the name of the game, and it's goddamn impossible. And you and I are not even able to figure it out in 2-hour conversation on a lot of these guys. But like, that's it. Like everybody has to do that. Be like, well, how over is it for week 17 versus how over is it for week 1?
Yeah. I think let's talk quarterback, because this is
oh God.
Yeah. I mean, partly
this one's tough.
Well, in some ways I think it's one of the ones we've already gotten an answer on, right? And I want to bring up Justin Fields, because he was, if you want to talk about week 1 brain, I don't think the collective NFL community and Steelers beat writers, and we've talked about Mark Caboli at The Athletic, was talking about how, look, this is Russ's job. Like and it sounded very much like he was hearing from the team, like they believe in Russ. When they signed Russ, their intention was for him to be the starting quarterback. They're going to see this through. I wouldn't expect to see Fields like at all this year. I think it's just going to be Russ all the way. But then he would also talk about how Fields was not dead to be the 2025 starter. Now, okay, hang on, because that's interesting. You're saying he could be the 2025 starter, but based on what? Based on what audition, right? There's some audition, surely, because he's not getting reps with the ones now. You're saying Wilson's getting all the reps with the ones. He's not going to play at all this year. So but they're also intrigued about him being, that's like the most week 1 brain thing I've ever heard. Like yes. You're not seeing the week 18, like week 18 Fields. You just told me that week 18 Fields is starting if they don't make the playoffs, like at like basically 100% rate. Mm-hmm. The only way that's not happening is that he already started and was so bad he got benched.
You're right.
So like, but and I know, but that's like, if you're close to the team and you're hearing from the team, like the team is planning on making the playoffs. We're a playoff team. We're not going to audition Fields in week 18 because we're going to be gearing up for the playoffs. But there's another reality in which they don't make the playoffs. And in that reality, very, very clearly, Justin Fields was going to start, and probably before week 18, which has some real impacts for us as fantasy players. Because essentially, I was reading that is if the Steelers don't make the playoffs, which they probably will, because they're always the 7th seed, then, but if they don't, then we're probably seeing Fields at the end of the year because we're hearing from a beat writer that they're interested in him potentially as a cheap 2025 quarterback. So that's where like the beat writer's explicitly telling you you're not going to see Fields this year, but then saying something that makes it very likely that we see Fields this year if they don't make the playoffs. And then it's like, what are the odds they don't make the playoffs? Like decently high. So, okay. So that was the first week one brain thing with Fields. But then, you're like, there's also the thing of Russ is the guy. They trust him. He knows the offense. He's getting the ball out on time. But we know who Russ is, man. We know what the stage of his career is at. And it's just been so funny to see that because Russ had to push a sled around and now he can't be out there and we get in Justin Fields, that they're like, oh, this guy, he actually runs. Did you know that? He looks fast when he runs the ball. It's like he's throwing interceptions. He's making big plays. He's Justin Fields. He's out there being Justin Fields. And everyone's a little intrigued by that because, frankly, it's intriguing. Justin Fields is an intriguing player because when he's really good, he's really good. Unfortunately, when he's really bad, he's really bad. But it's just like I think we've already seen, we've seen Cable League change his tune on this in a pretty good way. He's like, I don't know, like maybe we do see some Fields this year because this is kind of intriguing. Like this is a lot more intriguing in person than I was led to believe it would be when people were telling me, no, it'll be Russ. Don't worry, it'll be Russ. So it's like, it's just fun to see like someone go from week one brain to then go. I mean, it's almost new week one brain of like, week one starter now. And that's not really the question. And it's never been the question. It's just like, what are the odds that Russ can hold this job for a whole season with a guy like Fields behind him? I've maintained the whole time that those are pretty low odds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of fun to see, even through it still being about who the week one starter is, but it's fun to see, the Steelers beats be like, yeah, probably not going to be Russ all season, given what we're seeing in camp right now.
And to see the Steelers beats, the overall collective NFL world, and certainly the best ball and fantasy football world have, like you said, kind of just a new form of week one brain, but having people start to see the light in the collective industry, start to kind of see the thesis of the bet that was Justin Fields 2 months ago, but now start to see it because they're seeing practice like, oh, so you're telling me there was actually a chance that he is the week one starter? It wasn't just these idiots saying, yeah, well, what if he's starting in week 17, right? It was hard to it wasn't hard to articulate, but it was hard to sway someone off of an anti-Justin Fields stance previously, given the information that we had because of week one brain, because it's so hard to tell someone, especially at quarterback, that like, you're not for sure getting the locked in starter. You might be getting almost assuredly not the week one starter at that time is what we had to tell you. You're drafting a quarterback in fantasy football that's probably not going to start in week one. Like why that just doesn't compute.
If you want to hear what week 17 brain sounds like, in our rankings chat, Kyle Dvorak is now freaking out that Justin Fields might start week one because he's been drafting Justin Fields and is worried that if that happens, he'll get benched before week 17.
You want to talk about week one brain? That is week one brain. That I think everybody. No,
he's got week 17 brain. He doesn't want him to start week one so that he's alive for week 17.
Yeah, it's the anti-week one brain. Yeah. It's just like, I'm so worried about week 17 that I don't think I want this guy to start week one.
Don't start him now. Right. There's no way he's going to make it to week 17 if you start him now.
Yeah, he has no chance. The moment that they lose to Jameis and the Browns or whatever, like the moment that he throws 3 picks and fumbles and they lose to, like the Jameis-led Browns or whatever, like it's going to be over and they're going to go to Russ. But
Russ being the guy you need because Fields starts week one.
Fields starts week one.
Such a gut punch to us.
And that is so best ball. That is the most best ball. Like I said, that is the I fade James Conner every year and draft the other Cardinals running backs, and James Conner just buries me every single season in week 17 when the whole thesis was he's a week one. He's a week one. He's a week one player. That is the new Russ and the new Fields. But it is like just kind of like fun to see. And I think that's maybe the best example, not being worried about him being around in week 17 because he's starting week one, although I understand that sentiment. But just like the idea that we were betting on a quarterback because of week 17 and, you know, the later season upside and just the single game upside, it really was just like everything that you said, plus the fact that he brings this really, really unique single game upside that we just can't reproduce. You know, we can't reproduce what Josh Allen can do in a single game with any late round quarterbacks, no matter what we tell ourselves about any of these guys. They're fine. I like a lot of them. I draft a lot of them. But Justin Fields is the only one that can come in and drop 40 in a game because he is that archetype of a player. We don't have to like him as a player. I'm like totally lukewarm on Justin Fields as a NFL quarterback. But fantasy football is not real life football. We're not playing what was it before we went live? Sam football or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm not playing these new forms of fantasy football that are, you know, I got to hire the guys taking tickets in the parking lot and put together the whole organization. I don't got to do that. I just need fantasy points, and he provides them. And so he's a great, but the psychological thing is pretty true. I was drafting Justin Fields. Some of these absolute psychopaths in the Spike Week Discord with their exposure to Justin Fields are just like, I wonder what it's like to wake up in the morning and like pull up your exposures and have like 40% Justin Fields right now. Like you just got to wake up with this smile, unless you're Kyle.
Be nice.
It's got to feel so great because I was the coward. I drafted him and I was drafting him, but I even put out a tweet. I
mixed him in.
There was like 3 or 4 generational wealth opportunities, I think, in May that I put out on Twitter, and Justin Fields in the last round was one of them. And I'm sitting here with like 8%. And I'm like, you're such a coward. Like I was hammering Rashee Rice and I was hammering like, you know, all these other things that I thought were awesome. And then I'm like, didn't do Justin Fields. And it really pisses me off, but we can still buy this one. You can still buy the Justin Fields. It's not like he hasn't confirmed week one. He still may not even start week one for all that we know.
He probably won't.
Yeah, but we can still buy that one. And he is one of the best week 17 versus week one bets, I think, that we've ever been presented in best ball, other than just like, you know, all the rookies and all that kind of stuff. But now the prices on all those guys are much steeper and the price on Justin Fields is not. And so we're also getting, again, to this, like, as we learn more about the week one stuff, these bets change on all these other guys, and some of the best bets move up. Right? You can't get Yoshi in the last round anymore. Estime goes in the goddamn 160s and 170s of all these drafts. Like a lot of these guys that we're gaining more information on are moving up, right? Chase Brown is moving up, etc. We're having to pay more for the better bets now, and we're paying less for the worst bets. But there's a couple guys like a Justin Fields that are still stagnating back at that back end. And a perfect example. How are you treating, though? We have to ask before we got a handful of minutes left. How are you treating him versus like a Drake Maye? And I don't even really care to put JJ McCarthy in there, but how are you comparing, kind of, because, you know, it's a similar idea of the week 17 bet versus the week one bet, but Justin Fields feels flashier because he's getting a little more hype during camp.
Yeah, no, I mean, partly I bring up Fields because I think it's a similar situation to Maye, and we haven't yet had kind of the Maye like enlightenment the way we've had kind of the Fields enlightenment, where it's like, it's not that Fields is now much better to start, so much better odds to start week one. It's that I think a lot of people have had that kind of moment where they're like, right, just because he doesn't start week one does not mean he won't start at all this year.
You can see it now.
Yes.
Everybody gets it.
Everybody can see it. I don't think we've quite hit that with Maye. In fact, I think people are starting to see it less. We had that Gerard Mayo quote where he was basically like, yeah, probably just starting Jacoby Brissett no matter what happens in training camp. Like, that's just what I'm going to do. Okay. You know, like, that's fine. That's okay. Every reports out of Patriots training camp is that the offense looks pretty bad. Now, that might be because they're functionally starting a second team offense as the first team reps with the twos, right? You've got, it's like Drake Maye, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk mixing in with them over there. And on the other field, you got Jacoby Brissett with Juju Smith-Schuster
KJ Osborne,
KJ Osborne,
Austin Hooper.
Austin Hooper. Yeah, it's like, I wonder why this isn't looking too good.
Yeah.
So that does not obviously have any of that. I mean, their offensive line, no matter which team it is bad. And that's going to be a concern for their ability to put up points. It's not a concern for Maye's rushing because he's a really, really willing scrambler. He runs from a clean pocket as well. Like, I think one of the things he's going to have to work on to kind of become a really good quarterback is probably being a little bit more patient. But in the meantime,
he learned from Sam Howell. He played behind Sam Howell. They come from the same scheme and the same system.
Well, he gets out of the pocket. Sam Howell is way too patient.
Yes. Sam Howell has a death wish when he plays quarterback.
Yeah. He could use maybe a little more Howell to his game, but once they get a line, don't be Howell until they get a line. He's gonna, in the meantime, I think he's gonna put up a lot of points with his legs, and it's probably that style is probably gonna fit better with the bad line than Brissett's to some extent. We'll see, but like, there's just such a low probability that this team is going to be able to execute a Jacoby Brissett offensive plan for more than 4 or 5 weeks. It's just not like they're like, and what's funny? Like, okay, like imagine if we just thought about week 8 nonstop. Like, what's going to happen week 8? Like, it would be as valid as like what we're thinking about like week 1. Like, who cares that Jacoby Brissett is going to start week 1? Like, truly, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's 1 week in a 14-game sample. Like, it's just not that important. And yes, he's likely to start week 2. Yes, he's likely to start week 3. But it starts to get shaky pretty quickly. Put yourself in week 6. The Patriots have won 1 game. The Patriots look horrible on offense. The Patriots don't have any reason to put Jacoby Brissett out on the field anymore. The Patriots, by the way, are the New England Patriots, one of the most storied franchises in NFL history now. They have a rabid fan base. I don't know if you heard, but they drafted a quarterback number 3 overall. The fans of the 1-win Patriots would like to see that player now, please. In fact, they've been asking to see that player for a few weeks. So, like, you're telling me that Drake Maye's not seeing the field in week 7, week 8 in that kind of scenario? Like, he is. He's getting out there. He's probably getting out there maybe even a little before that. They have a really rough schedule to start off the season. They have the lowest win total in the league. We're seeing Drake, like, it's just the ultimate week 1 brain thing to me, and I'm seeing people go even more week 1 brain with it. Like, oh man, is this concerning? What do you think about this? That Mayo's saying that there's like no chance that Maye starts week 1. Like, I don't care. That's how I feel about it. It would be better if he started all season. That's more points for our rosters. But that's never been likely. I never thought that was likely. That was like this sort of tail upside outcome that was like slightly baked in. But it's not. When I take that out of his price, I think Drake Maye is absurdly priced. Like, I think he's one of the best bets that we can make. In the 16th, 17th, 18th round, he's a no-brainer with a 0% chance to start week 1. So if you give me like a 5% chance to start week 1, I'm only just reaching a little bit more on him.
Yep.
But I'm still taking him a ton in week 16, 17, and 18, partly because I think the odds of him not starting by midseason are really low. And that's going to be, I think Pete asked me, like, Pat, what would it take for you to like move off of this? And it's sort of difficult for me to move off of it because it's based on kind of the more fundamental stuff. They took him 3. Mm-hmm. Brissett's good, but he's
things
not
that can't
amazing.
Change.
Things that can't change.
They can't.
What can change? Yeah. So this is a slate. This is 1 slate, and this is how I'm playing it. Based on the fundamentals in front of me, I'm playing it that Drake Maye in the 16th or later is a smash, and I will be taking him a ton. I am extremely flat at quarterback. I barely draft any quarterbacks over like 10%. Drake Maye is my 3rd highest drafted player. and my 2nd highest drafted is Jalen Polk because I'm setting up Drake Maye, baby. So
where's Javon? Are you bringing up the Javon Baker nowadays?
5th highest. 5th highest Javon Baker.
That's good. It's a pretty fun. You talk about a asymmetric upside. That trio is about as good as it gets, I think, in a best ball. Dude, you nailed it. I prefer the Fields side of that. Like,
I get that.
It's really difficult to do Maye and like take. You can't like.
It is. It's difficult to take both. Yeah,
because I'm not taking them on the same team, and I mean, technically, I guess I could, and we'll see, depending on what the Fields news look like. If we get like, hey, Fields is our week 1 starter.
maybe he's a bridge to Maye.
Fields is the week 1 bridge to Drake Maye.
Fields going from week 17 brain to week 1 brain is just a perfect.
We opened this with like, I can't handle everything that's happening in football. If that's the full evolution of this offseason, that Fields goes from week 17 to the bridge, to the week 1 early season bridge to Drake Maye. I don't think but it would be really fun to draft just like a Justin Fields Drake Maye team at the end of the summer. I'll be totally honest. Like, love
fun.
Crazy shit.
That seems fun. And you know what? If you draft a third quarterback, you're a coward.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Why ruin the fun? Dude,
why ruin the fun by scoring points at quarterback?
I totally agree. The screenshot equity is worth way more. Winning a best ball tournament with just Justin Fields and Drake Maye just dunking on everybody would just be worth so much more than your 12 points a game from whatever,
If that happens, Underdog needs to like donate more money to the prize pool. They just need to be like, I'm sorry, but like what you just achieved is so improbable that we're actually adding $1 million to the pot. It's just it's too wild.
Admittedly, my brain is very broken. Okay, so I'll own this. Like, I like to post the engagement farming, like on the negative. You talk about the mental health of Twitter. It's very negative because I'll go post like a solo weekly winners last year, Sam Howell, Cole Turner team or whatever, and everybody's just like, what is this fucking guy doing? And I'm like, what if Sam Howell and Cole Turner are the QB1 and tight end 1 in any given week? I'm gonna win all the money, and then we saw how that went, but. Being serious, I actually think it was a great way to wrap up the kind of quarterback Justin Fields, Drake Maye thing, and your point specifically about like if we just said week 8 instead of week 1 or instead of week 17, and we just said week 6. What does week 6 look like, or what does week 8 look like? I do think it's easier to wrap your head around, and people would treat it differently than they do, because week 1 just like it versus week 17 feels like, and it is a very big calendar difference, but it feels so ginormously different, and it will be different. But when we just say, well, what does mid-season look like?
Yeah,
and especially,
and we don't spend a month thinking about mid-season, like, or month. I mean, 3 months, right? We literally just 3 months. Like, what is this? And especially, I think we do a much better job in May, June, and early July of thinking about the whole range of outcomes over the course of the season. But yeah, it's really like August through early September where we start to shift to specifically thinking about week 1. And what if we just did that for week 8? What if we just specifically sat down and we're like, week 8, I don't know, will this week 1 starter have a role then? Like, it would just be, we'd probably be just as wrong about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
But in part because we wouldn't think about week 1 enough, which counts just as much as week 8. But it's just it's sort of an arbitrary thing, and within this game, obviously week 1 happens first, and time works. Time marches steadily forward.
Time works, yeah. Other than this isn't a Doctor Strange movie, so it does work in a normal fashion. So that we have to deal with it that way. Just the last thing before we go that I was going to add to your kind of point about the like the week 8, the week 17, all that kind of stuff is other thing to remember about week 1 brain. And like the quarterback one is the easiest way to make it happen, is like overly worrying about week 1, or maybe overly worrying about a player not having a week 1 role is the better way to think about it. A Drake Maye, a Trey Benson, a Kendre Miller, Khalil Herbert, all these guys, Zack Charbonnet, all these guys we talked about. This is also the time when your entire roster is available to you. No one's hurt yet. Nobody's on bye yet. You drafted Drake Maye with Patrick Mahomes. If you fucking needed Drake Maye in the first month on a Patrick Mahomes team, that shit was dead and buried anyway. Like, if Patrick Mahomes fails so spectacularly for 6 weeks, for 8 weeks, that you needed
or gets hurt. I mean, if you needed Drake Maye, he probably got hurt. And like, you took Mahomes in the 4th or 5th. Like, that team is probably dead.
Right. If 14th round, 15th round Kimani Vidal was so mandatory for the first month of the season, for the first 6 weeks of the season, right? The week 8 thing. If by week 8 your team is so bad because Kimani Vidal didn't play for 7 weeks, either you screwed up the team somewhere or it was just never going to win. Like, it was over. You know, it was completely over already. So I always try to keep that in mind too. Like through the week 1 brain thing is like, you know, week 1 is certainly a factor, but we're not drafting Drake Maye in the first round. We're not drafting Kimani Vidal in the second round. We got those guys. The week 1 brain, that's been taken care of in the first 8 rounds or whatever of my draft. I got my week 1 shit taken care of. Now, how do I blend the rest of it together so that I'm getting the week 17 thing, but I'm not like, you know, I'm not screwing up this whole collection of players because it's about that whole collection of 18 players trying to win the tournament in week 17. So
yeah,
we gotta go. What do you got other than a party happening at your house?
I would also say not putting your head in the sand on some of this stuff that changes the bets. Like Benson, should Benson fall? Do we say no? Benson doesn't need to fall because he's got a breakup profile. That's more redraft brain to me, right? We go Benson. No, Benson should fall, but to where and at what point am I what are we? We're sort of retreating, right? We're like he's a breakout, and then we get bad news. We retreat, but we don't just keep running.
We didn't surrender. We retreated.
We retreat. We regroup. And then we put up another defense of Benson around, I would say, the 120s. So let's come into the 120s somewhere in there, and we can be drafting Benson again. And look, if he was in the 130s, I would draft a ton of Benson. You know, so that's like finding the new price where you feel comfortable making the slightly different bet, but don't lose sight of, you know, what the most important part of the bet is on a guy like Benson. So yeah. I'll direct people to Legendary Upside. I've been working on this article for like 2 weeks, but I'm going to have it out Monday morning. And then we're going to have an article from Daniel Raz coming out early next week as well. Both are on the kind of pocket of running backs, which I've toured around with calling the running back oasis. After I was on with yeah, he called it a lush paradise of running backs. I was like, the running back oasis. That's what we usually call this. So we're going to have a couple articles on that part of the draft, how to attack the running back oasis. Look for those early next week. And if you want to get 40% off Spike Week, sign up for legendaryupside.com and then use promo code LegUp. I've had some people ask about the Sidekick and the Draft Hacker and their compatibility. Very compatible. These things work extremely well together. So if you're interested in checking out both tools, Legendary Upside, Spike Week, 40% off.
It's the most powerful technology kind of suite that you can get in best ball. I will pretty much leave it at that. What I will say is I have been working on a piece for a while. I think you and I have very similar writing styles. We kind of bounce around and end up down side roads and all that kind of stuff. But the concept of like the phrase like perfection is the enemy of progress or whatever. Is kind of a lot of my best ball approach this year is like, I don't want perfection. I just want to keep moving forward. Kind of a thing. So the Drake Mayfield's conversation, a lot of that is like, I don't need to be perfect about when they play. I just want to be directionally right about like my process and landing on the right kinds of players and the right kinds of roster constructions, and then just letting the progress and the good execution maybe create perfection by week 17. But I don't want to seek out the perfection when I'm in my draft, and some ideologies around becoming a better drafter and thinking about best ball in a little bit better way. But we got to get out of here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Again, use promo code LegUp on Spike Week for 40% off and get the Draft Hacker, Draft IQ, put all that together with the Sidekick and Pat's rankings and everybody's rankings. And I promise you, you'll be better off in best ball. We'll be back next week here with another episode of Legendary Sickos. See you guys.